Hello and welcome to Calls. This is the 2022 John Deere DFS Tactics Show. One more field change for you this evening, leading into the tournament. Steve Stricker has withdrawn, replaced in the field by Morgan Hoffman. So we have honestly quite a alternate tournament field quality, if I could get the words out. A lot of the bigger names heading over to Scotland this week, prepping for the Scottish Open and then the Open Championship. We've got a lot to get into, quite a heavy projected ownership board. It's kind of all or nothing, so we'll see if we can't find any values hidden throughout some of the price board. So let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best tool out there. It's going to make you a much smarter gambler, a much better DFS player. Go check them out. It's well worth your investment. In the descriptions to the videos, there are links to my social media. This is where I place my betting cards for the golf content I create. That will come out after the show tonight. Need to finish some of my DFS lineups, but I will be posting that to Twitter. And then also on social media is where I post some research for the baseball and golf content I create, including this past Monday where I posted a few facts about the winners of the John Deere leading back to 2012. And I mentioned that there are 6 players in the field that qualify under the circumstances that I put out on Twitter. So if you want to take a stab at who they are, put it in chat, put it in the comments of the video, reply to me at Twitter, see how many of the 6 you can get. And then finally, we're live. Chat is open, as I mentioned. See if you can guess any or all of the 6 players by the criteria that I put forward. Who are you looking at for this weekend? Are you going to be using the 2 heavily used players in the 10Ks? Who are you fading? Who's your go-to pivot? Want to hear about all that. And then if you have any last-minute lineup questions, this player versus that player, all that good stuff, I'm here for that as well. Let's figure out our strategies and tactics for the 2022 John Deere. And we start with the mixed condition model that I built for this week. Hopefully that camera focuses, maybe. There we go. So as you can see here, we talked through several factors this week, but the overriding or the one that is constant for the John Deere week or year to year is that it is easy. And I don't think that camera is still focused, is it? There we go. Sorry, my camera decided that, well, maybe better for you all if it was blurred, but we talked about all week how the John Deere has played easy year over year. It's not short, it's not long. There's the DA Wabering is the architect, so there's no architect info to go by. So all we had as far as a tournament overarching feature is that it's easy. So there's a lot of easy metrics here. We looked at that throughout the week. And then I mentioned that we would look at Windfinder tonight. I'll do that after the breakdown of the price board and the mixed condition model, because it's going to play a factor. And you can see I have 10% in that already. Sorry, I'm going to be adjusting this one more time. There we get centered. There we go. So let's get into the mixed condition model here. 15% in strokes gained approach. We looked all week at how this was going to be a strokes gained approach and putting type tournament. And when I looked further into it, Michael Kim in 2018 gained 13.5 strokes. We looked at that. And if you take his astronomical result out of it, the winners are still putting well, but not to the extent of being more important than approach. So I'll put 15% in strokes gained approach, especially with the wind that is supposed to be coming in starting tonight. The rain on Friday. Approach is going to be a key factor this week, I think. And then we really talked a lot about this particular tab in Fantasy National, the birdies and bogeys. And I mentioned all week that I was pretty gun shy about using birdies or better. I thought I was just going to use birdies gained. I looked back, and some of the tournaments that I had hit when it was easy, say Cam Davis at the Rocket Mortgage last year, Rory McIlroy at the CJ Cup this past fall, they were all birdies or better, even if the tournament didn't yield a lot of eagles. And the more I thought about it, it's not that eagles aren't uncommon. They're going to happen this week. There is one very good eagle chance on a par 5. So I think it was more prudent to look at birdies or better gained as opposed to just birdies. So I know I talked all week about how I was leaning towards birdies gained, might not use eagles, ended up going with birdies or better. So that's the explanation behind that. And then we looked at proximity on Monday night, especially total procs. The graph in Fantasy National said that the 125 to 150 range of approach shot was the most important, or the most common, I should say, especially in relation to the average tour event. But we noticed that it just wasn't all that important in terms of high leaderboard success, but total proximity was. And especially with the expected conditions, the soft conditions Friday with the rain coming in, proximity I think is going to be even more heightened. So I put 15% in proximity. So you see basically 30% in approach style metrics, and then who converts those, the other 15%. 10% on strokes gained total, easy to par. Again, this is an easy tournament, has been for years. Who plays well when it's easy? Who plays well when the wind kicks up? So we'll look at Windfinder here after a little while. And then we looked at various different metrics between par 3s, par 4s, par 5s. I wanted to put par 5s the par 4s in total at 10% and put 5% in 400 to 450 and 450 to 500. But when I looked back, really the majority of the strokes gained par 4 came from this length of par 4s. It's not to say that the 450 to 500 isn't important. The 3 par 4s that measure 350 to 400 aren't important, but the majority of the par 4 strokes gained came in this range. So I have 10% there and 5% in the rest of the par 4s. And then 5% in par 5s, 5% in par 3s, even though all of the par 5s measure between 550 and 600 on the scorecard here at the John Deere. It is pretty common for 2 of the 3 par 5s to be moved into the 500 to 550 range throughout the tournament. So I went ahead and used all strokes gained par 5 as opposed to the one specific range. And then driving distance, we talked about at the very end how it could be a little bit of a hidden statistic. Put 5% in driving distance and then 5% opportunities gained when it's easy. I want to see who converts them, but I also want to see who just gives themselves opportunities when it's easy. So one of the big things that's missing from this data model, as it usually is for me, is putting. I looked back, we took a look back both Sunday and Monday and saw that putting form wasn't necessary coming in. Dylan Fratelli, your winner in 2019, no putting form coming in. Michael Kim, the week he gained 13 and a half strokes on the green, he had lost strokes putting to the 2 tournaments prior. So a hot putter is not necessary to win at the John Deere. The same as being a good bent grass putter is not necessary. Dylan Fratelli again, average putting on bent. The 2016 winner, who was the 16 winner? Ryan Moore, not good putting on bent. So I just don't have any putting in there. That's why I'm so focused on birdies or better, proximity, opportunities. Guys that just have a hot putter are going to win this week. So there is the mixed condition model. And when I ran the results, they were really, really surprising, even by my standards, because I have some outlandish calls and rankings and all that stuff. But even by my standards, they're pretty far out there. So my top 10, at least purely analytically speaking, Nate Lashley is number 1. Lonto Griffin, C.T. Payne, Christian Bezadenhout, Austin Smotherman, Webb Simpson, Matia Schwab, Adam Hadwin, Alex Smalley, and Scott Stallings. I mentioned that Monday, right before we left the show, I was really high on Scott Stallings. I didn't think he would be as low as 10th, but he does not give himself a lot of opportunities, and he has not played well when it's easy, but his irons have been fantastic lately. Proximity has been very good. Top 20 in par 5s. He's been top 20 in this field in driving distance. So a lot to like with Scott Stallings. But let's cover a couple of these players, particularly 2 of them in the top 5. Let's start with the number 1 player analytically in my rankings. It's Nate Lashley. Not the best with the irons. It's okay. I'd say good. Top 30. He is very adept at birdies or better, and he gives himself a lot of opportunities. So this is the dream scenario where a player gives himself a lot of opportunities and is converting them. Very good, or I would say good, maybe good to very good in proximity. Another statistic I think is going to be very, very important this week, especially with the rain coming in Friday. Top 10 in the wind. Top 20 when it's easy. The only thing that he is lacking is distance. And because it's only at 5%, that's why he's being propped up a little bit in my rankings. It certainly does concern me, but distance isn't mandatory. Zach Johnson, never been a long hitter. Ryan Moore has never been a long hitter. So distance isn't a requirement. It is nice to have here, and it can lead to upper leaderboard success, but it isn't required. So a lot to like with Nate Lashley. C.T. Payne, I was a little surprised was this high, but number 1 in this field in the strokes gained approach. Really plays well when it's easy. He plays okay in the wind. Now, his par 5 scoring is atrocious, and like Nate Lashley, does not hit it far. So if this course does play longer with that rain softening up the course, it could be a little bit more challenging for C.T. Payne and Nate Lashley. Lonto Griffin, number 1 in easy rounds. Number 10 or top 10 in the wind. Top 10 in both irons and birdies or better gained when it's easy. A lot to like there. So I still have the 2 major factors or major owned players, Webb Simpson and Adam Hadwin, a little bit lower in my rankings than you might think. I really do like Webb this week, but we'll get into all the ownerships and all that stuff, but do like Webb quite a bit this week. Number 6, I think he's finally getting healthy. Adam Hadwin, he's given himself a fair amount of opportunities, but he has not converted them all at all. You would prefer this combination where gives himself more opportunities than conversions, because you would think eventually those conversions are going to happen. I don't know. He is still 8th. It's not that I'm off of him, but I don't know. There's a little bit of pause here. He's not the best when it's easy. Again, like I said, he's not fantastic at giving himself a lot of opportunities. You know, if this was, say, maybe top 20 and not converting, I'd be much, much higher on him. But he does certainly lack giving himself opportunities when it's easy. Let's see. Elsewhere here, pretty high on Alex Smalley, Schwab. So why don't we get into the price board? Let me bring up the projected ownerships here. Again, per Fantasy National. And we have, sort on the salary board, we have 4 players in the 10Ks. You see them there: Webb Simpson, Adam Hadwin, Sahith Theegala, and Jason Day. You've got one pure pivot for the entire contest in the 10Ks. You can probably guess who that is. It's Jason Day. I was really, really high on him last week. Came back to bite me. So I'm completely staying away. It seems like a lot of people are staying away. He's at 4% projected ownership. Just don't know where Jason Day is, really. I mean, the irons have been bad. Not good when it's easy. Does not give himself a lot of opportunities when it's easy. Just a lot of things that I think are going to play here are not working in his favor. Now, you have, in the other 3, you have the most projected owned player, the 4th most projected owned player, and a pretty high middling use player. So the most projected owned, probably pretty obvious, Webb Simpson, probably the biggest name still left in this field this week. Last I saw, it is still Adam Hadwin that's the favorite at 10-1, and Webb was 12-1. Could have changed by now, but you know, these 2 are the pretty clear favorites in the tournament. I mentioned Webb. You know, I like Webb quite a bit, but seeing him at 18% is really, really tough to really be excited about. And I'll explain why later on, but a lot of your fellow contestants are thinking you have to use one of these 2, and I don't think so. So again, Webb Simpson, great play. I'm not advocating you not using. I mentioned last week as well that I was zigging when the rest of the analytics community was zagging. And it turned out I needed to zag with them. My DFS was pretty poor, minus the JT Poston recommendation. But this week, I'm doing the same thing. I'm going the opposite way of the analytics community, but this time it is by my choice as opposed to what I'm seeing analytically. Because the numbers say use Webb Simpson, use Adam Hadwin. I am choosing to go a different route this week. But Webb Simpson, fine. Adam Hadwin, I mentioned my bit of caution with him, but you know, otherwise, almost top 10 in the irons in this field. Very good at par 5s, par 4s. Really, the biggest concern is, you know, the conversion rate of birdies are better when it's easy, and he doesn't give himself the most opportunities. So that gives me a little bit of pause, but you know, still a solid play. He's at a little over 15.5%, and then Sahith Theegala is right under 13%. And I'm kind of low on Sahith this week. I know he played extremely well last week, but I don't see this course fitting Sahith very well. Yes, he plays he plays amazing in the wind, at least in relation to this field. But he is not good with proximity. He is not good at converting birdies or better, and he's even worse. I mean, he's one of the worst players in the field at giving himself opportunities when it's easy. There is enough concern on my end about Theegala that this is going to be a full fade for me, and this is one of the players that I'll lose to. I know he's playing great, but this is a fade for me, and I just can't get there. I cannot get there. The putter is getting hot lately. You know, the irons have been very good lately as well. Like I said, he's been playing great. 2 top 5s in his past 3 events. He's made 10 cuts in a row. Everything numbers wise would think Sahith Theegala should be a good play this week. I've got concerns. So I'm going to fade Theegala. He's one of the players that I'm going to lose to. So if I'm cautious on Adam Hadwin, and I'm not excited about Webb Simpson, with his ownership at 18%, and I'm completely out on Jason Day, that tells you the style of lineup that I'm going to build this week. And again, it is not a analytical thing that's kind of forcing my hand like it kind of was last week with the other direction from the analytics community. This is a conscious choice. So I'm pretty much skipping the 10Ks. I will dabble in Webb Simpson. I will dabble in Adam Hadwin. But for the most part, I am forgoing the 10Ks. And that is how I'm going to create my uniqueness. Because your fellow contestants are using Webb and or Adam Hadwin quite a bit. So in the 10Ks, I like Webb Simpson. He'd be my number one play. And then Adam Hadwin. It's only these two. I am completely fading these two. Everybody's fading Jason Day. I'm fading Sahith Theegala. So I would go Webb Simpson 1, Adam Hadwin 2. In the 9Ks, you've got Denny McCarthy, Maverick McNeely, Charles Howell III, and Christian Bezuidenhout. So again, only 4 players. So this is a very, very cheap price board. And this tells you even more what kind of teams I'm gravitating towards. The one player I am all in on this week is in the 9Ks, and he is the least owned of the 9Ks, so that's partially why I'm all in on this player, and the wind is another reason why I'm all in on him, which is a little bit of foreshadowing that I see a pretty significant split this week. But in the 9Ks, everybody's getting some use. Every player is in between 13.5% and 9.5%. 13.5% being Charles Howell III, 9.5% being Denny McCarthy. I am pretty much all in on Denny McCarthy around 2 things. 1, easy. He plays so extremely well when it's easy. Top 10 in this field when it's easy. Top 20 in birdies or better. Now, the opportunities aren't as high, and I'd much prefer to have the Adam Hadwin ratio, whereas, you're giving yourself more opportunities, just not converting them. Denny McCarthy might be one exception. He is probably the best putter on tour. So as long as he's giving himself a modicum of opportunities, I trust that he's going to convert them. Now, this number might fall slightly, and I expect that, but he is, again, probably the best putter on tour. He's going to convert these given that he gives himself enough opportunities. So Denny McCarthy is is one of the few outliers in the birdie conversion rate versus opportunities gained by my thought process. We talked about how he plays easy courses well. He plays in the wind very well. He plays the length of par 4s here very well. Not to mention all the par 4s in general. And we saw Monday night in the data dive just how important the par 4s are here. So the proximity, bad. The irons, bad. Yes, that is enough of a concern if you want to be off of Denny McCarthy. Again, with the soft conditions, I think the irons will be better, and it's going to give him a much better chance to putt and convert. Kind of like CT Payne, kind of like Bezuidenhout and these other players we talked about. Nate Lashley, he struggles with distance. He's a fairway finder, but these fairways are generally easy to hit anyway. So if that rain comes in and softens the course and really makes it longer than the 7,300 yards, or play longer than the 7,300 yards, McCarthy's going to be in trouble. So there's enough here to be worried about. This is where I'm all or nothing on Denny McCarthy from the easy standpoint and the wind on what side of the draw he's on. Otherwise, like McNeely, I'm fine with. I'll use McCarthy McNeely. I'll use McNeely Bezadenhout, McNeely, CH3. I really like Christian Bezadenhout as well, as you can see. The irons have been ho-hum. I mean, they're good. That's not fair. They've been good, not spectacular. But number 3 in proximity, number 4 strokes gained total when it's easy, and then plays well in the wind too. So a lot to like here with Christian Bezadenhout. He's got the issue with all these other players that I've highlighted. CT Payne, Denny McCarthy. He doesn't hit it far, so that might be an issue. But you see the guys that I'm kind of gravitating towards. These guys that'll find the fairway. The irons are typically pretty good, minus Denny McCarthy. The irons are pretty good. I'm really leaning into the easy course metric. So in the 9Ks, again, I mentioned I'm all in on Denny McCarthy, so he's number 1 for me. Even though he is the highest price, he's the least owned. Then you have Bezadenhout at 11.5, McNeely at 11.5, Howell at 13.5. So, for me, it's McCarthy, then Bezadenhout, then McNeely, and then Charles Howell. I like Charles Howell. I think he's just 4th of these 4. We'll move into the 8Ks. Scott Stallings, Patrick Rogers, Nick Hardy, Adam Long, Vernon Todd, Cam Davis, Lucas Glover, Lonto Griffin, CT Pan, JT Poston, and Cameron Champ. So as much as I was touting JT Poston last week, he is a fade for me this week. He is about the 6th most projected owned player in the field this week at 14%. I felt like the course last week suited JT Poston well. A lot of it being on the POA putting. We're not on POA. We're on true bent. And look at some of these numbers. He's really bad with proximity. He is terrible on easy courses. Now, he's the best in this field at the range of the par 4s. He's good in the wind. But no, I don't want JT Poston this week. And seeing him at 14%, complete fade. Just like Sahith Theegala, complete fade for me. Last week he gained more than 5 strokes on the green. Now his putter has been hot-ish, but he's not a premier putter on the PGA Tour, and he gained 8 strokes on approach. You see, he has not been anywhere near that lately. He's gained 2.5, 3, but it wasn't too long ago he was losing 7.5, 1.5, 1. So if Poston wasn't 14%, I might think about using him. This is a complete fade for me. So no JT Poston, no Sahith Theegala for me. Elsewhere in the 8Ks, your second most projected owned player in the field and most projected owned in the 8Ks is Cam Davis, which really stinks. I know he only rates 33rd in my data model. I really like Cam Davis this week. It's an easy course, and even though this doesn't say that he plays well when it's easy, his win at the at the Rocket Mortgage last year, I mean, you see, easy is when he does his best work. It's just that the others in this field do their best work when it's easy as well. But you see, Cam Davis, he putts bent extremely well, plays well when it's easy. His around the green is not good, but that's mitigated here. You don't need strokes gained around the green. The Travelers, he made the cut, he didn't hit the irons well, he didn't putt well. And those are his 2 strengths of his game. I expect Cam Davis to have a very, very, very good John Deere this week. I'm really high on Cam Davis. It really stinks that he's at a little over 16%, but this is one chalk play I won't be able to get away from. Really like Cam Davis this week. Elsewhere in the 8Ks, you've got Patrick Rogers, 16%. Scott Stallings, 15%. I can fade Scott Stallings because I'm so high on him, I have an outright wager. So I can choose to have my exposure be in the outright market on Scott Stallings. But if you don't have a wager on him, I would suggest you think about using Scott Stallings even at the 15% projected ownership. 3rd in strokes gained approach. I mean, his irons are in fuego right now. He gained more than 7 at the Travelers. Now, U.S. Open, we don't have those stats. He missed the cut, so don't really know what it was there. The Memorial wasn't great, but then Charles Schwab gained almost 8, gained 4.5 at the Byron Nelson. And he's sandwiching these with good putting performances. Nothing elite, but good putting performances. His weakest game right now, around the green, doesn't matter here. I really like Scott Stallings. He plays his best when it's easy. There's a lot to like here with Scott Stallings. So I'm going to limit my use of him in DFS only because I have an outright on him. If you don't have an outright on him, I would suggest looking heavily at Scott Stallings. Lonto Griffin, CT Payne, these guys I'll be using. Surprisingly, CT Payne is the least projected owned player in the 8Ks, and he's third in my data model, number 1 in strokes gained approach, number 1 in the par 3s. We talked about if the rain really does hit and makes the course play longer, you could be in trouble, but there's a lot to like here with CT Payne. Top 15 when it's easy. Top 20 in proximity. I mean, he's good in the wind. So I like me a lot of CT Payne this week. I like Lonto Griffin plenty this week. He's sitting at 11%. Then you have Vernon Todd. He's at 11%. He's in the upper third of my rankings, but I have him unstarred. That'll tell you what side of the draw I think he's on. Adam Long. I like Adam Long quite a bit this week too. Good in the wind. Not the best when it's easy, but he plays par 4s extremely well. I don't know. This is kind of like the gut feeling that I had with JT Poston, Tommy Fleetwood. That went well and not went well a couple of different times. I don't know. Just kind of a gut feeling on Adam Long. I kind of like Adam Long this week. Nick Hardy been playing fantastic. The numbers say he should not play well here, but again, a lot of this is being accrued from when he was hurt, and I didn't know that. I'm okay with Nick Hardy, but he's at 14%. That's a little bit high for my liking. Patrick Rogers, aforementioned, 16%. I like Rogers this week, but I hate 16%. I'm high enough on Lonto Griffin. I'm high enough on CT Payne. I don't want any part of JT Poston. I'm going to use Cam Davis. That I don't need to use a Nick Hardy, a Patrick Rogers. I like Adam Long enough to use him. So yeah, that's my look at the 8Ks. Like Cameron Champ, okay, sure. It's lukewarm. Kind of fine if you use him, kind of fine if you don't. Okay. If I'm in here in this range, I'm going to go to CT Payne at 8,100. If I absolutely don't have the $100 for CT Payne, I don't mind using Champ, especially over Poston, but meh. So there's a look at the 8Ks. Again, full fade on JT Poston, especially at his projected ownership. I am fading Nick Hardy, but not because I don't like him. It's about the ownership. Rogers, I can't get behind 16% ownership on Patrick Rogers, and I like him this week. Cameron Davis is chalk that I'll eat, and I really, really, really like Lonto Griffin and CT Payne. So we move to the upper sevens. And in the upper sevens, you've got 3 players that are getting a whole lot of love, and then a couple of middling use players. So the 3 highly used players in the mid sevens all hover around the same price. So John Huh, 15.5%. He's top half of my data model, but you see he's unstarred. Tells you what side of the draw I think he's on. And then the 2 7,700s, Adam Schenk and Adam Svensson, 15% for Schenk, almost 15% for Svensson, and I like both of those players a lot. So it's going to be hard for me to limit my use of them. If I had to choose one, I will choose Svensson. The irons have been really good. He's really good from the length of the par fours. Now, he does lack the distance, but again, you've seen the players that I've gravitated towards this week. Look at this. Opportunities. Plenty of opportunities. He just hasn't been converting them. If he converts them, and I know that's an if, he's not the best putter in the world, but we're also not on POA. So, and look at these putting numbers. He's actually been pretty good with the putter lately. Like Adams Vinson quite a bit. So that's some more chalk I'm not going to be able to get away from. Cam Davis, Adams Vinson. I like Adam Schenk. I'll use Adam Schenk too, but I like Vinson more. So those three are the ones that are getting a whole lot of use in the mid-sevens. Your couple of middling owns, Martin Laird. Really like Martin Laird. Plays well when it's easy. Irons have been very good. Good at the range of the par fours. Now, he does, surprisingly, being a Scottish-born player, he doesn't play well in the wind, which is odd. At least he hasn't lately. Now, over his career, he's supposedly played well, but he hasn't played well lately. The putter has just been very, very bad. He's normally been a very bad putter. So there's enough reason for concern here, but I do like Martin Laird this week. I mean, top 15 in my rankings. And then the other, I said middling use. He's approaching chalk territories. Ches Reavie, and I want no part of Ches Reavie this week. I mean, yes, he's starred. He's in the upper half. I mean, the prox is good. He gives himself plenty of opportunities and doesn't convert them, so sure, there's that narrative there. But, you know, the irons, lukewarm. Again, the conversion rate, bad. Bad in the wind. Bad at the length of the par fours. No distance, no par five. Yeah, I don't want any part of Ches Reavie, so Reavie's another full fade for me. So that's 3 full fades of fairly chalky plays that obviously if they play well, I'm going to lose. Tagala, if he plays well, I'm going to lose. Ches Reavie, if he plays well, I'm going to lose. JT Poston, if he plays well, I'm going to lose. But I don't have a lot of confidence in those players this week. Elsewhere in the upper sevens, take a look at Alex Smalley again. I really like him. The irons have been okay. He's good in the wind. He is good when it's easy. He has the distance if it indeed becomes a longer or plays longer. You see, he doesn't have a terrible statistic. He's top half in everything. The worst one is par fives, and they are, I don't want to say mitigated in importance, but they're certainly not as important as the par fours, not the range of the par fours. Yeah, I like Alex Smalley again this week. Doug Gim, someone else to take a look at. Like Doug Gim, Nick Taylor's fine. Griot is fine. I'm actually a lot higher on Griot this week than I was last week. Last week he missed the cut. The irons are still bad, but he plays easy courses well. He just plays easy courses well, and this is quite clearly an easy course. So I'm a little bit higher on Griot than I was last week. Not in love with it, but I can see a scenario where I would use a little bit of Griot. So elsewhere here in the upper sevens, you've got these pivots. Honorbon Lahiri, 5%. No thank you. Smalley's at 7.5%. I really like that, so I'm going to use some Smalley. Doug Gim, 7.5%. Dylan Fratelli is at 3%. If you want to believe in former, course performance, your champion in 2019, I'm just not there. Griot, 6%. Nick Taylor, 9%. So all these guys that I have starred, I like, except for Reavie. Again, Reavie's only starred because he's in the top half. But otherwise, Schenk, fine, very chalky, but good. I love Vinson. I'm not going to be able to get away from that chalk, but love Alex Smalley. I really like Doug Gim. Emiliano Griot's fine. Laird's fine. So a lot of options here in the upper sevens. So combined with the lack of 10Ks that I'm using and the propensity of players I like in the upper sevens gives away the type of of lineup that I'm building this week. But let's move to the low sevens. We have 4-5 players that are getting some use. So your fellow contestants are kind of going around in this area of the price board, determining where they want to bottom out, and who they're bottoming out with is kind of bouncing all over the place. But this is where your fellow contestants are bottoming out. So you have Mark Hubbard and David Lipsky, both at 7,400. Sorry, I'll scroll up for you. Lipsky and Hubbard, both at 10.5%. I like them both. Really, really like them both. I mean, 11th and 12th in my rankings. Now, Hubbard, plays very well when it's easy and in the wind. He just doesn't have much distance. Where Lipsky really takes off is in the irons, in the proximity. He plays well in the wind, and he takes advantage of par 5. So both of these players have their reasons. I'm going to be using both. They're not chalky, but they are not unique in the area. You have Chris Goddard at almost 12%. I've been using Chris Goddard quite a bit the past 2 or 3 weeks. Last week it saved some of my teams when he played okay. The irons have been good. He's been pretty good very good in the wind. His short time on the PGA Tour, par 5s very good, distance very, very good. So enough here that if you like Chris Goddard, fire him up. But he is at almost 12%, and I like Tyler Duncan just as much at half the projected ownership. So if you like Chris Goddard, go ahead. But at the same price, I like Tyler Duncan just as much for different reasons. The irons are good. He plays easy courses well. The proximity is great. Duncan, does not play well in the wind. The par 4s of the range haven't been good. So 2 different players here, but reasons to like them different ways. Number 1 player in my data model here, Nate Lashley. He's at 11%. Not going to get away from him. I'm using my number 1 player in my rankings. So Nate Lashley, 11%. The fact that he's only at 11%, I love it. I'm going to use him. At the same price, Matia Schwab. Really like Matia Schwab. He is only at 2.5%. Love Matia Schwab. Number 1 in birdies or better. And it's not like he is not giving himself a lot of opportunity just making everything. He gives himself plenty of opportunities too. The best player in this field in the wind. Top 10 when it's easy. Love Matia Schwab this week. This is probably going to be the Tom Hoagie of this week, but I just love Matia Schwab. And then in the 7Ks, take a look at Austin Smotherman. Really like Austin Smotherman. Take a look at Chad Rainey. Chad Rainey won the Corrales, a windy event. Now the Corrales is really, really long, but that should suit Rainey even better because he does not hit it far. He gives himself plenty of opportunities when it's easy, converts them at a very good rate. Now he doesn't overall play easy courses well, but don't sleep on Chad Rainey. And Smotherman's at 10%, Chad Rainey's at 3.5%. So a few options here in the low 7s. Again, a place where I don't mind going. So I don't have to build this stars and scrubs shell that your contestants seemingly are building. And then in these 6Ks, there's not a lot here that I'm going to recommend. You've got a couple of plays here that are above 7%. Lee Hodges, fine. I like Lee Hodges. He's top 25 in my rankings. 7th in proximity. Top 20 with the irons. Plays well when it's easy. I don't mind it, but he's at a little over 7%. Vaughn Taylor, we've talked about him this week. He's at 8.5%. I'm fine coming down here, but 8.5% is the highest projected owned percentage in the 6Ks, but I don't mind it. Top 10 in irons, 4th in proximity. His putter has been bad, and he's not a bad putter. There's a lot to like here with Vaughn Taylor. I mean, look here. He's given himself plenty of opportunities. He hadn't converted any of them. So once that putter gets going, Vaughn Taylor's going to be in for a good weekend. And this could very well be it. So I'm going to use a little bit of Vaughn Taylor. Just know that he's not unique for the 6Ks. And then the last player that's getting some love in the 6Ks is Chase Seifert. Okay, not in love with it, but I can understand why. Again, more strokes gain approach, proximity is good, plays the range or the range of par 4 as well. Opportunities are plenty, birdies are better, or the conversion rate is not good. So plenty of reason to like here. So a couple of players that I will say in the 6Ks, and again, I'm not in love with them. I'm building balanced lineups because I don't want to come into the 6Ks. But if you do, let's see. I really don't mind Kramer Hickok this week. I know a lot of the numbers are bad. But this is, again, one of those gut feelings. Plays pretty well when it's easy. The prox is okay. Now, if it really, really does get windy, it could be trouble for him, but he is on the good side of the draw. Take a look at Kramer Hickok. Again, I don't love it. I really, really don't love it. But you could do worse in here, I think. But honestly, really, if I'm coming into the 6Ks, it's Vaughn Taylor. And he's the most projected on player in the 6K, so we've already talked about him. I like Lee Hodges. I suppose I could mention Hayden Buckley. He's been converting on easy courses a whole bunch. He just plays easy courses well. So there's something for you there with Hayden Buckley. But again, I don't love it. I've been bottoming out in the 7Ks. So in the low 7s. There's a look at the price board. Let's go ahead and take a look at Windfinder real quick. So, and I will refresh this for you also. We have up to the second forecast because we know weather absolutely doesn't change from now until the tee-off time tomorrow. But I see a pretty significant Thursday AM, Friday PM favor. The reason being, Thursday AM, yes, you have a lower sustained amount of wind, but a lot of gusts. That's not good for the AM. That's not good. I'm getting a lot of these gusts. But look at Friday PM. Nothing. Just calm. Darnell, hey, how you doing? Hope your week has went well. Are you ready for the John Deere this week? Who are you thinking about using? All that good stuff. I'm just getting ready to cover that. I think it's a pretty significant Thursday AM, Friday PM split. Again, it's going to be fairly warm tomorrow. They're supposedly going to get some rain. Again, look at this wind. Friday PM is consistent, strong wind, and then in the morning they're dealing with gusts. Now, to be fair, some of this has moved further and further into the evening, because when I looked at this earlier today, this 30-mile-an-hour gust was in the 10 a.m. portion. If this continues to be like this, then there's really not a big advantage. So we'll have to see. You have some good options. Let's see what you think. What are you thinking? What part of the price board are you gravitating towards? If you just came in here, I just finished the price board overview or my thoughts on it. I'm ignoring one complete portion of the price board, which would be surprising to most people. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts. So if this keeps moving, if this wind keeps moving into the evening, then there's no real solid AM PM favor. Again, I saw a Thursday AM PM favor because this wind was still active in the morning. So make sure you pay attention. Stay up as late as you can, wake up as early as you can, and check the weather. So there is a look at Windfinder. I did have the PGA Tour leaderboard up. I still play on Super Draft, but I like certain players. So I will say that I am foregoing a lot of the chalk, especially in the upper tier. Like, I'm ignoring Adam Hadwin. I'm ignoring Webb Simpson. I shouldn't say ignoring them. I'm limiting my use in them because they're going to be so popular. I think there are enough mid-priced options that you can forego those heavily owned players and still have a very productive lineup. But because originally I thought there was a pretty heavy Thursday AM favor, I have this up so we can cover it very quickly. If indeed there is a slight Thursday AM favor, some of the players we've talked about, Griot, McNeely, Alex Smalley, who I'm really high on, your feature groups, Cameron Champ, Cam Davis, now Morgan Hoffman, it was Steve Stricker. You have Chad Rainey, JT Poston's in the good side of the draw, Robert Streb, Martin Laird, Pat Gazire, Streelman, Watney Hinsby, Denny McCarthy. Why I'm extremely high on Denny McCarthy, because I thought he was in the really good side of the draw. Hayden Buckley, Svensson, let's see, other players here. Nick Hardy on the good side of the draw. So those were the players that I was focusing on because I saw such a severe advantage. So let's move to Microsoft Excel very quickly, start building some lineups here. We move over to there. All right, so let's cover tiers real quick first. And I am not an aficionado on tiers. I can just go by the assumed ownerships from Classic. But in tier 1, you have Webb Simpson, Adam Hadwin, and Sahith Theegala. I'm going Webb Simpson. I think he's just the safest play because all three of these guys are pretty darn chalky. Tier 2, Jason Day, Denny McCarthy, Maverick McNeely, Christian Bezaidhu, and Scott Stallings. For as high as I am on Denny McCarthy in Classic, a lot of that is based on the projected ownership. I'm going to take Christian Bezaidhu, hoping that he is unique in the tiers. So I'll take Bezaidhu in tier 2. Tier 3, CH3, Patrick Rogers, Nick Hardy, Adam Long, and Cam Davis. I really, really like Cam Davis. I think he's the best choice, but if you want some uniqueness, take a look at Adam Long. Again, I've just got a gut feeling on Adam Long this week, but I think Cam Davis is the best play. Tier 4, Vernon Todd, Lucas Glover, Lonto Griffin, CT Pan, JT Poston, Cam Champ, and Kevin Streelman. Lucas Glover is your defending champion. I'm just kind of lukewarm on him. I really like CT Pan this week. I really like Lonto Griffin this week. Again, Poston's just a full fade for me. Champ is eh. So for me, it's between CT Pan and Lonto. Take your pick. I'm between one of those two. I don't really, especially in the tiers, don't really have much of an argument for or against the other. But these two, I think, are the clear choices in Tier 4. Tier 5, Ches Reavie, John Huh, Anirban Lahiri, Adam Shank, Adam Svensson, Dylan Fratelli, and Doug Gim. For me, it's between the two Adams. I'm going to take Svensson. I think Shank's a fine play as well. Tier 6, Alex Smalley, Martin Laird, Nick Taylor, Emiliano Grillo, David Lipsky, and Mark Hubbard. For me, I am taking Martin Laird, no questions asked. So there's a look at the tiers contest. Let's start building some classic lineups and see what we can do to combat these chalky lineups, these chalky plays like Webb Simpson and Adam Hadwin, all that good stuff. So if we're going to build a chalky team, we're going to start with the most projected owned player. That's Webb Simpson. We talked about in the price board how around the low sevens, your fellow contestants are going a lot of different ways on where they're bottoming out. If they do dip into the sixes, it's Vaughn Taylor. Don't really want to go there. So Austin Smotherman's at 10.5 at 7K. That's what I'll use for this example. They could be going Nate Lashley at just under 11%. Goddard up at 12%. To be fair, they're probably using two of those three. So I'm going to use Austin Smotherman for the cheapest price. I'm going to use Chris Goddard for the most ownership. Now, with that, I would think they're going to try to squeeze a Webb Simpson and an Adam Hadwin. I don't think they'd be able to do that, but I can try. So Adam Hadwin, that leaves them $73.50 per. No, not a chance. So if they're doing that, they're probably coming down to something like a Charles Howell. That leaves them $7,900 per. Yeah, that'll be So they have someone like JT Poston, and at 78 is John Huh. So that looks like a fairly chalky team. They could be substituting out John Huh for Svensson or Shank, maybe using a couple of different players down in here. There's a look at the shell of a fairly chalky lineup there with Webb at the top and Austin Smotherman at the bottom. Now, if they are dipping into the 6Ks for Vaughn Taylor, I am going to try to squeeze in an Adam Hadwin for them. Again, just because I'm trying to use different names, I'll use Nate Lashley here. So Vaughn Taylor, Nate Lashley, they're probably still going to have to use Chris Goddard. And at 77, that's Shank, that's Svensson. So there's a look at a pure stars and scrubs, trying to use both the big dogs, Webb and Adam Hadwin, and then Shank, Goddard, Lashley, and Vaughn Taylor. Both of those lineups above 13%. I do not like that at all. So let me tell you what I'm doing to combat this. And again, I think Webb is a fine play. I think Hadwin's a fine play, although I gave you the reasons why I'm a little shy on Adam Hadwin. I'm going to forgo the entirety of the 10Ks. I want no part of Jason Day, and I'm going to full fade Sahith Theegala. If he plays well, I lose. So I'm going to forgo the entirety of the 10Ks. That means I'm building some of these balanced teams, and I've been starting the majority of them at Denny McCarthy, and I talked about why. He plays extremely well when it's easy. Yes, he's been converting more than he's been giving himself opportunities, but he's the one outlier I would trust in that regard because he's probably the best putter on tour. So I've been going something to the effect of like a Denny McCarthy, Christian Bezadenhout start. And I still have enough room here to maneuver. I mean, I still have 7,800 basically per player here. So depending on how low I'm willing to go, I mean, I can try to squeeze in, an upper 8 or a middle 8. If I am really high, I'm really high on Cameron Davis, but if you think he has to be used, I can still use a chalky-ish player because there's so many plays I like all throughout the 7Ks. I mentioned Alex Smalley, I'm really high on. So I can go, Cam Davis, Alex Smalley. I'm still left with 7,500 per, which is Martin Laird and Nick Taylor, Martin Laird and Emiliano Grillo. I've been building these style of lineups. Maybe not necessarily exactly these people, but this is still a sub 10% projected owned or projected match in your big GPPs, and I'm using the second most projected owned player in the field at Cameron Davis. If I come off of Cam Davis, like I can go from Cam Davis to say a CT Payne, who I'm really, really high on, and that gives me even more money to go on. I can go a CT Payne and then come down to an Alex Smalley. I know I used him in the last example, but I'm really high on Alex Smalley. And then, I mentioned a Tyler Duncan. I don't mind. I'm going to use Nate Lashley. We've used him in an example already, but there's Tyler Duncan. And now I've got 8,000. If you're a believer in JT Poston this week, which I'm not, you can fit JT Poston in this lineup. Maybe you want to come off of Bezadenhout. You want to go like a Denny McCarthy, Maverick McNeely start. And then, CT Payne, Smalley, Duncan. You still have 7,600 for a Doug Gim, who I'm okay with. You can find some more money here. Maybe you come off of CT Payne. Let's use Adam Long. I said I've got a gut feeling about Adam Long. So now we need 3 players in the lower 7s, and this is where I've been just fine coming down to. So we used Austin Smotherman in the chalky play. I said take a look at Chad Rainey. I like Chad Rainey this week, so I'll use Chad Rainey in this example at 7K. And now I'm back up to 7,500 per again. Goddard, Duncan, Matia Schwab I really like, so I could go Nate Lashley and Matia Schwab and still leave money on the table. I still have 600 that I could spend. If I want to make Lashley and Schwab my bottom, that leaves me 76, which is Doug Ginn. So there's another style of lineup. That's a 9% projected match in your big GPPs. These are the style of lineups I'm building. Yes, I've been, coming in, dipping my toe into a Webb Simpson, but if I'm doing that, it is still hinging on using a Denny McCarthy or a Scott Stallings. Like, I'm not trying to combine him with Adam Hadwin, because I think Simpson and Hadwin, or Simpson and Tagala, Hadwin and Tagala, I think that's going to be very, very common this week, just due to the nature of the field, with this being almost an alternate field quality. So if I'm going Webb Simpson, I'm going to try to find some uniqueness. Like, if I'm using Webb Simpson, I'm definitely using CT Payne in this. If I could spell. Like, I'm definitely using CT Payne in this. I'm not using a Cam Davis. Let's see, I'm using a Matia Schwab for sure. Probably try to bottom out at Matia Schwab. Other places I could go here. I mentioned Adam Long. Patrick Rogers is a little bit chalky, but I could go there. Still like Denny McCarthy. It's going to be pretty difficult to fit in other pieces, but you see what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to limit. If I'm going to use Webb Simpson, I'm trying to keep it at a 5v5 is what I'm getting at. That is a look at what I have for the John Deere this week. Darnell, what are you thinking? What do you see in those lineups? Are you thinking similar style things? Do you think I'm way off base, that I have to use Webb and Hadwin or Tagala in that it is a 3-horse race, or McNeely? So I'd be interested to hear your all's take. Do you think Cam Davis is a must play? I think he's pretty close to it, especially at 8,400. He's not going to break the bank. Plays easy courses extremely well. But that's going to do it for the John Deere DFS Tactics show tonight. Darnell, it was good to see you in chat again. Thanks for stopping by. Let me know in the comments how you do. I'd be interested to hear what kind of plays you made this week. Thanks for tuning in, and for everyone out there that tunes in and watches and listens, I always appreciate the support. I'm thankful that you all choose to spend some time with me and cover golf betting deep into the analytics and such. So for all of your wagers that you've made this week at the John Deere, for all of the DFS contests you've entered this week for the John Deere, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.